Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atiq Ahmd Bhatti, a fourth-generation homeopath with over 20 years of professional practice in this field of healing. In the Homeopathy Health Show, I'll be talking all things homeopathy and natural, with guest interviews, tips and advice, and answering some of your questions. Homeopathy is truly a unique complementary system of healing, suitable for all ages, young and old. I'd love to hear from you and welcome your questions on homeopathy and how it can or has helped you. Feel free to email me at health@liketreatslike.co.uk or visit online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Well, firstly, how are you? I hope you're well and in good health. Now, in today's show, I'll be covering part 2 of my special series on the history and development of homeopathy. And later in the show, I'll be joined once again by my special guest over the past several weeks now, James Fernley of Nature's Laboratory, for part 3 of the interview on propolis and its amazing benefits for immune support. With the regular time for reflection and some of your questions answered, it's going to be another splendid show. So let's begin with my special series on the history and development of homeopathy, and this is part 2. Homeopathy means like cures like. This is the method of treating a disease with the materials derived from the toxic and injurious agents causing similar signs and symptoms complex. Now, before Dr. Hahnemann, this symptom was evidently outside the established system of allopathic treatment, although, having said that, some of those treatments actually that were offered at that time worked on the same line as homeopathy. But they were very limited and they weren't understood as such. So, as I've said, a few practices were in vogue on an experimental basis and in a limited controlled way. So, for example, ipecac and opium were given in a diluted tinctured form to relieve nausea and vomiting. In fact, you'll be interested to know that both these medicines are known as strong vomiting and nausea inducers. Dr. Hahnemann had experimented on many such drugs, and he was surprised to note that not only did they cause a certain illness, yet at the same time they caused that particular illness when administered in a diluted form. During this deep and thoughtful experimentation, Dr. Hahnemann discovered the fantastic defense mechanism of the human body. The physicians believed that the human body had the power of defending itself, but were unaware of the sheer magnanimity and the principle of its working. They did not know how to utilize the defensive nature of the body against the establishment of the disease. Now, this secret was revealed to Dr. Hahnemann after his constant, thoughtful, deep study of the human body's defense system. His observations about the great defensive capability of the human body were not only astounding and unbelievable, but must be believed because the observations he offered were so clear. In support of this, Dr. Hahnemann further noted that the body reacts naturally to every external attack. During continuous experimentation and observation, Dr. Hahnemann postulated that if, in the past, some disease has been overlooked and not reacted to by the body, then the introduction of a similar symptoms-producing agent in extremely diluted and pacified form would induce defensive body reaction and eliminate that sickness. Sadly, traditional medical doctors of that time strongly opposed Dr. Hahnemann and his work. In 1820, the proponents of the old allopathic system of medicine had his system of homeopathy declared unlawful by the government, and even they went to the extent of suing him. However, because homeopathy was declared unlawful, Hahnemann sent for Prince Karl Schwarzenberg of Austria and treated him successfully in Leipzig. The prince became naturally grateful to Dr. Hahnemann and recommended to King Frederick that all restrictions against homeopathy should be removed, and in future none should be reimposed. Unfortunately for Dr. Hahnemann, the prince re-indulged himself in a life of ease and resorted to alcohol. He became seriously sick again, and he was treated allopathically, but sadly to no avail. When the prince died, the Austrian government blamed the prince's death on Dr. Hahnemann. The public was outraged, his books were burnt in the open, and Dr. Hahnemann had to run for his life. He took shelter in Cothen, was patronized by the Duke of Cothen, and he stayed there for 14 years, researching chronic illness. He published the first edition of his research in 1828. In 1830 his wife passed away, and he married a French lady in 1835 and moved to Paris, where he practiced homeopathy till his death in 1843. So that brings us to the end of part 2 of the history and development of homeopathy, and what really strikes me is the sheer effort, the sheer humility of Dr. Hahnemann himself. He put in a great deal of effort, and yet he was so humble, and even though his life was at risk, he spent a further 14 years researching chronic illnesses. Now, who does that, unless you have a real commitment and dedication and willingness to help others, if you have a love for humanity and you want to serve humanity and you want to alleviate the suffering of humanity. So this was the character of Dr. Hahnemann, an extremely God-fearing person, very devout, very humble, very loving, very compassionate. And this is the gentleman who later on became famous all over the world. So famous, in fact, that today millions, hundreds of millions of people are using homeopathy with great success for all their ailments.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
It's time to go through some remedies now. Now, we have, of course, 4 seasons, and winter can actually sound very, very gloomy as one of the seasons. But whatever we do, we have no control over these 4 seasons, certainly unlike Vivaldi. Now, with the long winter months bring a host of minor to severe ailments, including the dreaded cold, flu, and general lethargy and sore throats. The days become shorter, of course, as we know, and that doesn't actually help matters, because when daylight becomes minimal, naturally the body responds accordingly. The large majority of people end up going to work or going to university in the dark, and they return back in the dark as well. But there is always good news. There are a host of homeopathic remedies and tinctures that are available to help you fight off the winter chills. Now, the chief winter remedy is actually the remedy called echinacea. Echinacea is a wonderful immune stimulant and naturally boosts the immune system, just what we all need, of course, through the cold flu season. Taken in the form of a mother tincture, echinacea actually helps provide effective and natural immune support, and it works wonders at purifying the blood, so it's perfect if you feel a cold or a bout of flu coming on. Following echinacea, there is also a companion remedy, and this is the remedy called ferrum phos. Generally, ferrum phos in a homeopathic potency, we're talking homeopathy here, and you will know that ferrum phos is available also in the form of a biochemic tissue salt, but I'm talking about ferrum phos in a homeopathic potency of 6x. Ferrum phos, as I've said, is both a homeopathic remedy and a biochemic tissue salt. But did you know that ferrum phos is actually one of the 12 inorganic salts within each one of your cells. Fascinating. It is a perfect remedy to fight off the common cold or fevers related to a seasonal change in weather. So it's one certainly to keep or in the cupboard as such, as one of the go-to remedies. Now another very favourite remedy of mine, which has polycrest features, meaning it can be used and is applicable for a large variety of ailments or situations which require it, is the remedy Aconitum nepalis, or aconite as it's called. This really is a truly marvellous remedy that helps for the sudden chill or sudden sneeze that occurs, and often we know this signals the misery of a cold or bout of flu coming on, and you think when you sneeze or you have that first cough, you think, oh no. But aconite is the remedy to go to at that time. Taken in a 200C potency, repeated perhaps 3 times over a period of 3 hours, so hourly, it can really, really help the immune system. It can really, really help the body fight off the effects of a bout of cold or flu. Now, we all have winter basics, but I think it will only be sensible to share with you the specifics here. Always wrap up warm in winter. Never have a shower or bath and then leave home while your hair is still damp or wet. Always make sure, during very cold spells, that you wear thin layers of clothing under your sweater or coat to keep you well insulated. Woolen sweaters actually are wonderful for this type of season, lovely and warm. And also, try to avoid staying out in the cold for lengthy periods if you can. Remember, I'm here to help you, so contact me at health@liketreatslike.co.uk for more information. Hi, this is Atiq from the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm here to help and support you in your health and wellness journey, to answer your questions on everything homeopathy and much more. To get in touch, contact me via my email health@liketreatslike.co.uk or visit online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk. You can also find me on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram by searching for Like Treats Like. Or just visit UK Health Radio online and you'll find my contact information under the Presenters tab. Homeopathy is a wonderful natural complementary system of healing, so let's work together for your health, wellness and vitality. I'm delighted to welcome back James Fernley, who's the founder and CEO of Nature's Laboratory, whose mission is to develop sustainable and effective natural medicines for the 21st century. Now, over the last several shows, we've been talking to James about propolis and the healing properties of propolis, his interest and the research that has been undertaken. James, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Atiq. It's been a joy to have these conversations. I'm looking forward to this one.
I've learned so much, and I'm quite sure that our listeners are just, learning so much, and their interest is increasing in propolis and honey itself. I wanted to speak to you really about the benefits, the healing benefits and properties of propolis as a modern form of natural immune support medicine, or as natural immune support remedy, and what your research has proven as far as the healing and curative properties of both propolis and honey.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we have to do in lots of different respects in facing the kind of dilemmas of our present sort of culture is that we have to rethink some basic concepts. And I think the present concept of medicine centers around the idea of an active ingredient, a specific, usually a single molecule in a pharmaceutical drug, a single active which targets a specific problem. And sometimes it's referred to as the magic bullet. It's something that really hits, whether it's inflammation or fungi or bacteria or whatever it is. It goes in and it just kills the bad guys. A feature, and I have to say this, I think modern medicine is a miracle. in so many different ways in terms of how it's enabled us to sort of treat life-threatening diseases.
Absolutely.
But we know that collateral damage is what we call, for instance, antibiotic resistance, which the World Health Organization now have in their top 10 global health threats. That it's in the top 10 there. And it's a far, far more serious, if you really look into it, it's a far more serious problem than we know. And it has two aspects to that problem. One is that we cannot invent antibiotics quick enough in order to keep up with the smartness of the bacteria who have adapted to so they're actually it only takes about 18 months to decode an antibacterial drug. The bacteria are much smarter than we think. So we've got this global problems. There's an immediate effect from this medicine, but there's a long-term problem. And the second aspect of that problem is that it's eroding something that we call our immune system. But our immune system is a very, very complex thing, which kicks in all sorts, or which goes down, for instance, in all sorts of different ways. Obviously, if we have a physical trauma, it goes down. If we have a social trauma, if we lose a dear friend or a partner or a parent or something, our immune system goes down. The great virtue of things like propolis is that it works in a very broad spectrum way. It works it establishes a relationship with you and your body because it has come from a relationship. So, I think we have to shift our perception away from this sense of targeted results to protecting the whole of our body, which means we have to look at medicine in a much broader sense, and we have to look at things that can help us in a much broader sense. So I think the value of propolis is as a product which can because it is the bee's immune defense mechanism, i.e. it's picked up the plant's immune defense, it's modified it, made it its immune defense. It has the capacity because to support our immune defense, something we know from time immemorial as well as current research. It's helping our whole being. And so, but I think this is a real big shift that we have to make. So when somebody says, well, what's so good about propolis? Why don't you do clinical trials to prove that it's, well, first of all, very difficult to do clinical trials with something that contains 300 different biochemicals and which are always different. It's impossible to standardize. You can't do a clinical trial without having a standardized material. Well, you can't do that in the context of developing a medicine. Of course, you can do clinical trials by seeing how it works on the basis of what you've got, and that's increasingly what's beginning to happen. So yeah, I think we have to shift the emphasis away from definitions of medicine, which are very singular and linear and product related, to medicine, which is more, as Hippocrates said, a relationship between the patient, the disease, and the doctor. A unique system where specific products can help us and not necessarily kill things stone dead.
That's a very realistic and interesting viewpoint as well, shared by so many others as well. But it begs the question, and this leads me on to the sustainability of natural medicine and the future of bees and propolis. just today, there was a report published that says that fertilizers confuse bees, making them less likely to land on flowers. And this is really to do with exhaust fumes, nanoplastics, viral particles that travel through the air, and other things as well, including, of course, fertilizers or pesticides, and the electric field that is around plants. I know a few weeks ago, we spoke about geomagnetic or geopathic stress on the body, the nervous system and the immune system itself, and the various negative vibrations that go along with that. We're all surrounded by technology, aren't we? Just sit on the tube and you know that nobody makes eye contact because everybody's on their phone. Whether you have a reception or not, they're still on their phone. And it's making us very introvert. It's having a negative impact. So how does that, how are we going to sustain natural medicine, and in line with the report that I've just mentioned, that fertilizers and electrical fields and chemicals are having such a negative impact that they're confusing bees, or removing them from the equation on the task of pollination, which is so critical to the planet?
Yeah. Well, everybody's heard these rather sometimes a bit apocryphal stories about what would happen if bees disappeared. But there is a general consensus that we would lose something like 60% of our foods.
Mm.
It's reported that Albert Einstein said that if bees disappeared, that we would all die in 4 years. Well, I'm not sure that's true, but it does illustrate the sort of the very serious role that bees have in our world. I want to talk a bit about a bit of research that appeared in Discovery magazine. I think it was about 20 years ago now. And it was by a mathematician called Barbara Shipman. And she was is an interesting lady because her father was responsible for the health of bees with the US agriculture department. And they lived in a small house, and he kept all his books in her bedroom. She subsequently went to Harvard, became a mathematician, and she started looking at some subquantum structures called multi-dimensional flag structures. These are apparently 6-dimensional structures that are part of the subquantum structure of energy.
Right.
And she tried to visualize these 6-dimensional elements in 2 dimensions by casting a shadow on them. Don't ask me, I'm not a physicist, I don't understand this, but she did this. And when she cast a shadow, she found that these 6-dimensional structures took the form of a figure of 8. She then thought, oh, that's interesting. And she remembered von Frisch's work on the waggle dance in the beehive, which, if you know it, is the bees go on a sort of dance in the middle of the hive, in a figure of 8 form. And the shape of that figure of 8 is related to the relationship of the geometry of that figure of 8 to the sun.
Right.
A direct relationship with the sun. Now, she then published a paper which said it looks like that despite the fact that bees have a very small brain within themselves, it looks like these 6-dimensional structures in some way represent a force which lives outside the hive and which enables the hive to work as a single organism.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
That really is.
Now, she got into a lot of trouble when she published that because she was making a connection between physics and biology, which you can't do apparently. But I think she hit the nail on the head there. I think she one way or another discovered that Well, let's ask the question, Atiq. What is it that coordinates 70,000 bees in the way in which they are coordinated inside the hive? What exactly does coordinate? Where is the coordinating force? Where does it live? Is it in the queen bee? No, it's not. It is outside them. So that itself. So the thing about, so what this tells me is that somehow this external dynamic force, which we won't speculate about what it is, but there it is. It's staring you in the face. This dynamic force is embodied in a sort of physical reality. If you like, it's the bits that keep the separate bits related to each other. It's the energy dynamic that keeps all the bits related to each other. It is, if you like, the bee's immune defense mechanism, and it's something keeps them together, just as something keeps our immune system together. And it's very complex, and we need to understand more about it. But in the bees, here's this bit of research, and I could say a lot more about this because it fascinates me. But I think the reality is that when you in 2013, 60% of all the bees in the US died of something called colony collapse disorder. The bees would leave hives which had plenty of brood in them, plenty of food in them, and so they weren't leaving because they were starving, or they left and they didn't come back. Sometimes it's called the Marie-Celeste syndrome. What has happened? What has happened? Now, this is the most serious example of the way in which the impact of the way in which we treat the honeybee, primarily as a result of commercializations. Let's remember that a beekeeper in Florida with 10,000 hives, say, carts those 10,000 hives over to the billions of hectares of land devoted to the almond tree. So it's carting bees, right the way across America. It's taking them to a place where there's only maybe maximum, perhaps a fortnight of food for them when the almonds become pollinating. But after that, there's nothing else. It's a monoculture. That monoculture can only be sustained by pesticides and herbicides, because that's the problem with monoculture. And so my feeling is that when you combine all the things that we do to bee, we put them in square boxes, we stop them from swarming, we requeen them we don't let them develop their own new queens. We feed them artificial syrup, to keep them on the road, to keep them going. We take too much honey away from them. We make them build their comb onto cell sizes which are bigger than they would normally do, because some bright spark discovered that if you make them build onto a bigger cell size foundation, you'd get more honey. And you did for a while, but after that, then some people would argue that because smaller bees were being placed into bigger cell sizes, that gave room for things like the varroa mite to grow. So everything is connected, isn't it? So my image of what is happening is that we have a huge list of stress factors for the honeybee, which like your piece of research about the from Sky, about the fertilizers affecting the bee's ability to identify the flower. I think that's only one aspect. And what I think it's doing is that it is progressively weakening the bee's ability to stick together.
Yeah.
And as a result, the bees are literally going. Colony collapse disorder is the most dramatic example of it. Is the bee is actually just falling apart. It's like someone has taken a pair of scissors and snapped the connections that hold it together.
Certainly, this forms part of the climate crisis, because as you were talking about, what's going on at the moment and the collapse, the words that came into my mind was an external disruption in the harmonics of Mother Nature, and that balance is not there, which the symphony of Earth is being disrupted by loud noises and bangs, and it requires a great amount of collective effort. But it actually requires, I think, more than all of that is realization by the individuals, those, of course, who are certainly in power, to make this stand now. I know there's a conference going on every year, it goes on regarding the climate crisis, but it's becoming, we're very close to the brink, where we're going to have problems. And I think we need to really reflect on this, that do we want to leave our children full of prayers for us, or do we want to leave them hating us? That what did you do to the planet?
Yeah.
There's so much that needs to be done. So much education is still needed. It goes back to the connected world, doesn't it? Life is so fast, making time for time. It's just get on with life and do what you can. But what it actually needs is a methodical approach on life. Life itself is it's a sanctity in itself. We need to protect others, not just ourselves. It isn't actually about ourselves, because if everybody ended up looking out for the person next to him, well, it goes round, doesn't it? So everybody ultimately is protected.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the point. I think we are all connected. So, what happens to our brother and sister, we need to realize that's significant, that it's important. Just as if we cut down the rainforest, we're affecting the rest of the world. It's not, and this is kind of chaos theories, isn't it? What we do, a butterfly flaps its wings in New York, and there's a thunderstorm in wherever. We must try and reconnect with our understanding of the world in a more comprehensive way.
I think we're it's interesting what you're saying, but I'm smiling as you're saying that, because and this is the thought. This is our parting thought for today's discussion. Certainly, is that it's fascinating that humankind is so intelligent, and yet we're so delicate when it comes to actually understanding the planet and what needs to be done, which is the main priority. Yeah. It's just, the mind boggles.
Yeah.
Yes. James, it's been an absolute pleasure. I do love our talks and discussions, and I'm quite sure that our listeners are equally as happy and excited as I am when I speak to you and listening to you. So I look forward to speaking to you next time, where we'll actually be talking about antibiotic resistance in a bit more detail versus propolis as modern medicine for immune support. So it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Atiq. As always, it's been a great pleasure for me too. Thank you.
Remember, you can shop all things propolis online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk, where you will find the highest quality immune support products manufactured right here in the UK. Just click on the Immune Support tab at the top of the site, and you'll find all the propolis products available to buy, from pure honey, oral health range, skincare range, whole health range, and the pollen range. And whilst you're there, take a look at my blog section to find blogs on homeopathy and natural healthcare. And now, it's time for reflection with poems of healing. This one is called Journey of Life. There are days where we feel deeply our inner voice and live clearly with its noise. It doesn't matter if the voice is a cry of a wild bear or a sweet whisper of a mum in her toddler's ear. The clearer we hear it, the stronger we are. Paths can cross or be far, can be highways or slippery slopes, can be concave or convex. There will always be something, someone to shut you down. Life is like a puzzle with black and white pieces, and we spend our lives looking for purples. Surfing colours and curves, speedy or slow, and at some moments we drop the anchors. We can do nothing but wait. Wait till breeze brings us to the ascending arc of the curve, and we continue the move until hugging the shore. Lying down, appreciate the extreme straightness of the horizon and the brightness of the sky. By dusty days and from the heart of the storms, there's always a hope, there's always a sound of music coming from far away. There's always a dance to share, a life to care. And may devils be judged and remain in hell, they could never change the warmth of mornings and the rhythm of seasons, do they dare. This poem was written by Ilham Brini, taken from Sauti, Poems of Healing, published by the United Nations.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Time to answer some of your questions. Now, I've received a wonderful question here, which is to do with pain and pain management. So we find that generally there are painkillers available off the counter, and also generally you may be prescribed painkillers. Did you know there is actually a homeopathic alternative? So there are two remedies which are very useful for pain management. So this is pain anywhere. Now, the first remedy is one of my favorite remedies anyhow. It's called aconite, and this is very, very effective for pain which is acute and also a sudden onset of pain or any violent or excruciating pain. Remember, aconite is known for its suddenness, so it can very effective for shock, very effective just to give for someone who's heard some bad news. It's a must-have at home in a first aid box as such. The second remedy is the homeopathic preparation of morphine or morphinum, and this is very, very effective for pain management, especially pain in the spine, sciatic pain, one who is susceptible to pain. It's very good for neuralgic pains, neuralgia generally, perhaps through the legs, arms, because of a result of a trapped nerve, maybe jaw pain, tooth pain. And it's also very, very useful. Homeopaths generally use this remedy also for shingles. It actually does help to reduce the severity of the pain. Now, these two remedies, aconite and morphine, in a homeopathic potency, can be taken, depending on the severity of the pain, can be taken 3 times a day, can be taken every 2 hours. However, it's advisable, strongly advisable, to contact a homeopath, a practitioner, and to ask for his advice and guidance on how to take. Potency-wise, generally a 200C, a 1M, and even a 10M if the pain is very, very deep or severe. But again, always consult a homeopathic practitioner for more information. And also note, as I've said in previous shows, if pain does persist or it is of a serious type, then you should always seek professional medical advice and guidance. Never live with the pain or never wait for the pain to subside. If, for example, taking these 2 homeopathic remedies, if you find after a few hours the pain is still present, then you should seek medical help. Now, questions can sometimes be serious, but there are also some funny ones. So I'm going to share a very funny one with you. You're going to love this. How many M&Ms can one fit in their mouth without choking? I have absolutely no idea. I do love M&Ms, however. I love the different colours, and they do taste really, really nice. As far as putting more than 3 or 4 in your mouth, I have absolutely no idea. And I certainly don't want to answer a question on choking, because that's just horrid, isn't it? But thank you for the question anyway. It's certainly brought a smile to my face, and I hope it's brought a smile to your face as well. Now, the next question, the last question for today's show, is someone's asked, what are the best remedies to take for grief? So, look, grief can come in various shapes and sizes as such. Shock can lead to grief, and emotion imbalance can obviously lead to grief. But the grief we're talking about here very much is about losing a loved one, someone very close to you. It could be a parent, could be a spouse, could be children, or grief related to losing a friend, somebody that you care about deeply. So that's the type of grief we're going to be talking about here. So the emotions become very out of balance, and a great deal of resilience is required to get through any type of grief. But also mental adjustment is also very much required. So there are actually a number of homeopathic but also batch flower remedies that are available for treating grief. Now, the beauty of homeopathy is that I certainly do this as well from practice for many, many years, is that I use the batch flower remedies in a homeopathic potency rather than just the liquid form that you get them in. And I find this but I say it amplifies the digital signature of the remedy itself. So let's go through these. Let me give you a few remedies as an example. The homeopathic remedies for grief, the first one is Ignatia, and this is very much related to personal grief, and it's a very, very effective remedy, especially when it's given at the onset of any sad or tragic news. The Ignatia remedy, the signature of the remedy, includes the symptoms of sighing and sobbing. And then you have Natramior, which is sodium chloride. Natramior as a remedy is actually the chronic remedy for Ignatia. So it can be used for long episodes of grief, or where someone has suffered for a number of years or just can't shake off that feeling of losing somebody. Natmior adjusts the emotions, and it's very, very good for also protecting a person from the ill effects of grief itself. And that can sometimes lead to, as you know, the ill effects can lead to depression, it can lead to anxiety, it can lead one to become introvert sometimes. So Natmior is definitely one to remember. And then we move to the actual batch flower remedies in a homeopathic potency. So you have a few here, and I've always found that gorse is a very good remedy for balancing emotions, and Star of Bethlehem also is very good at balancing emotions, but especially for emotions related to grief and bad news specifically. And such bad news can create an almost state of distress. It's also very useful for one being very unhappy or being inconsolable because they've lost someone that they dearly, dearly love and cared for. Another batch flower remedy which works very well in homeopathic potency is sweet chestnut. And again, like the other two, like gorse and like Star of Bethlehem, it helps to balance the emotions, and it works very, very well when someone feels completely alone and feels that there is no one left to help them or to be with them. And finally, one of my favourite remedies indeed, as far as the Bach flower homeopathic potencies go, is the remedy called walnut. Walnut is an absolutely amazing remedy. Now, the process that walnut enables an individual to go through is that it allows somebody to move on. Sometimes patients come and they become very stuck because of a certain trauma, and it takes many, many years, and they're unsure what to do, or they just haven't got the energy, or they haven't got the willingness to go forward. Walnut is absolutely amazing at this. I've used it specifically to help people move on with their life, and it works very, very well indeed. Now, as far as the Bach flower remedies and also Ignatia and Natrum Mur that I mentioned, for grief it really depends on the patient itself as to what potency you should go for. 30C is generally not sufficient at all, because grief is an episode of great distress, so you would need something deeper acting. Certainly start with a 200, but generally, I can only give you my example. I usually prescribe such remedies in a 1M or a 10M, according to the patient's need, and after a few days, or maybe after several weeks, you find that they're able to move on with their life. So I certainly hope that helps you. It's always difficult to be very precise with a prescription as such and the potencies, but for more information and guidance, you can email me at health@liketreatslike.co.uk, or just visit ukhealthradio.com, and you'll find my contact details under the Presenters tab. I do hope you've enjoyed the Homeopathy Health Show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Tune in next time for more things homeopathy, interviews and segments on the healing possibilities that homeopathy can bring you. And don't forget to visit UK Health Radio online at www.ukhealthradio.com to see the many other